Montana Territory, spring 1878. Yates Maddox believed that the frontier would kill anyone who dared to soften. At 25, he had already buried his father to a range war and his older brother to a Sioux raiding party. The lesson had carved itself into his bones. Love was a weakness that got you killed in the West. So he kept to himself, working cattle drives for wages, never staying long enough to plant roots or let anyone close enough to matter. He had just finished a grueling drive from Texas to Montana, 3 months of dust and stampedes and river crossings that had claimed 2 men. The other cowboys had headed straight for the saloons in Billings, but Yates rode east instead, drawn by rumors of work on a ranch near the Yellowstone River. The April sun was already hot at midday as he guided his sorrel mare along the rutted wagon road, scanning the endless grassland with eyes that had learned to notice everything. That was how he spotted her. At first he thought it was a bundle of rags caught on the fence post near an abandoned homestead. Then the bundle moved, and he realized it was a woman, hunched against the weathered fence, her dress torn and filthy, her dark hair hanging loose and tangled around her face. She looked like she had been dragged through hell backward. Yates reined in his mare, every instinct telling him to ride on. Getting involved with strange women on the frontier was asking for trouble. She could be bait for road agents. She could be crazy, she could be carrying disease. Nothing good came from playing the hero in Montana Territory. But she lifted her head as he approached, and even through the dirt and exhaustion on her face, he could see she was young, maybe 20 or 21. Her eyes were a startling blue-gray like a winter sky before snow, and they held a fierce determination that stopped him cold. "Keep riding, cowboy," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "I am not looking for rescue." It was the way she spoke that surprised him, not the words themselves, but the refined cadence beneath the exhaustion. This was no prairie washerwoman or dance hall girl. Her diction was educated, cultured even, completely at odds with her ragged appearance. "You are sitting alone in the middle of nowhere wearing what looks like a torn wedding dress," Yates said, surprised to find himself dismounting. "Pardon me for thinking you might need help." She glanced down at herself, and for the first time something like humor flickered across her face. It was a wedding dress, 3 days ago. Before I jumped from a moving wagon and ran 20 miles through the brush. Yates studied her more carefully. Now that he was closer, he could see the white lace beneath the mud, the elaborate beadwork on the bodice. He could also see the scratches on her hands and arms, the blisters on her bare feet where her shoes had worn through and been abandoned. Whatever her story was, she had not been exaggerating. "Who were you running from?" he asked. "My bridegroom, my father, my entire former life." She pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly but refusing to reach for the fence for support. "And before you ask, no, I will not be returning. I would rather die out here than go back." There was steel in her voice, and Yates recognized it. He had heard that same tone from men who had been pushed past their breaking point and decided to make a stand, consequences be damned. This woman meant what she said. "The nearest town is 15 miles west," he said. "You will not make it on foot." "Then I will die trying." She started walking, heading east along the road with a limping gait that told him her feet were in worse shape than she was letting on. She made it maybe 10 steps before her legs buckled. Yates caught her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, all bone and grit. Up close he could see that beneath the dirt she had a delicate beauty, fine features, and that striking blue-gray gaze that blazed with fury at her own weakness. "Let me go," she said, "so you can collapse again in 5 minutes." "No, ma'am. I do not need your help." "Well, you are getting it anyway." He lifted her into his arms and carried her to his horse. She fought him for about 3 seconds before exhaustion won, and she went limp against his chest. He could feel her heart hammering, could smell the sweat and dust and fear on her. "What is your name?" he asked as he settled her in the saddle. She was silent for a long moment, and he thought she might not answer. Then she said, "Penelope." "Penelope Nash, and I am 20 years old, though I feel about 100 right now." "Yates Maddox," he swung up behind her, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her. "And you are going to tell me the whole story, Penelope Nash, because I am risking my neck helping you, and I deserve to know why." She leaned back against him, and he felt some of the fight go out of her. "My father owns a mining operation in Helena, copper and silver. When I turned 18, he arranged a marriage to his business partner, a man named Augustus Thornton. I refused. For 2 years I refused." Then 3 months ago, my mother died, and I had no one left to take my side. Father said I was going to marry Augustus or he would disown me and throw me into the street. I told him I would rather be disowned. So he forced you anyway, Yates said. He locked me in my room for a week, no food except bread and water. Then he told me Augustus had agreed to wait, that if I behaved myself and came on this trip to visit his ranch in Montana, we would discuss things reasonably. I was stupid enough to believe him. Her voice went bitter. The moment we arrived at the ranch, there was a minister waiting. They tried to force me through the ceremony. I kicked Augustus in the shin, punched the minister in the stomach, and ran. Despite himself, Yates felt a flicker of admiration. How did you get away? I hid in their supply wagon. When they took the road back toward Helena the next day, looking for me, I waited until they were miles from the ranch and jumped out. I have been walking east ever since, trying to get as far from them as possible. She turned her head to look at him, and he saw tears streaking clean lines through the dirt on her face. They will be looking for me. My father is not the kind of man who lets go of his property, and that is all I am to him, property. Yates felt something cold and angry settle in his chest. He had seen plenty of hard men on the frontier, men who treated women and children like livestock. He had never liked it, but he had told himself it was none of his business. Survival meant keeping your head down and your nose clean. But here was Penelope Nash, 20 years old and desperate enough to risk death rather than submit, and he could not ride away, not from her. There is a ranch about 10 miles east, he said. I was headed there looking for work. The owner is a widow named Sarah Coleman. She has a reputation for being fair and tough. If we can get you there, she might take you in until you figure out what to do next. Why are you helping me? Penelope asked. You do not know me. For all you know, I am lying about everything. It was a fair question, and Yates did not have a good answer. Or rather, he did, but it went against everything he had told himself about staying uninvolved. Finally, he said, because you would rather die free than live in a cage. I respect that. She did not respond, but he felt her relax slightly against him, her head drooping as exhaustion finally overtook her fear. By the time they reached the fork in the road that led to the Coleman ranch, she was asleep, her breathing slow and steady against his chest. The ranch was bigger than Yates had expected, a sprawling operation with good grazing land and a sturdy main house. Sarah Coleman herself came out to meet them, a tall woman in her 40s with iron-gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. She took one look at Penelope and said, "Bring her inside." Yates carried Penelope into the house and laid her on a bed in a small room off the kitchen. Sarah shooed him out and closed the door, leaving him to wait in the main room with a cup of coffee and his own tangled thoughts. He should leave. He had delivered Penelope to safety. His obligation was done. He could ask Sarah about that ranch work and move on with his life. That was what he had always done, what had kept him alive and unattached for 25 years. But when Sarah emerged an hour later, his first question was, is she all right? She will be dehydrated, exhausted, feet torn to ribbons, but nothing that will not heal. Sarah poured herself coffee and sat across from him. She told me her story. Is that why you brought her here? She needed help. There are a lot of people who need help on the frontier, Yates Maddox. Most men ride right past them. Sarah's eyes were shrewd. Why not you? Yates set down his cup. I do not know, ma'am, I truly do not. Sarah nodded slowly. She says her father will be looking for her. Rich men do not like being defied, especially by their daughters. If he finds her here, there could be trouble. I know. I am willing to give her shelter anyway. She can work for her keep, and I will spread the word that she is under my protection. It will not stop everyone, but it will stop most. Sarah leaned forward. But I could use a good hand, someone who can handle trouble if it comes. You looking for work? This was the moment. Yates could say no, ride on, leave Penelope Nash behind and get back to the life he knew. Safe, solitary, survivable. Instead, he heard himself say, yes, ma'am, I am. He told himself it was just about the job. The Coleman ranch was prosperous, and Sarah paid fair wages. It made practical sense to stay for a season, build up his savings, and move on when fall came. But that night, as he settled into the bunkhouse with the other ranch hands, he kept thinking about Penelope's eyes. That winter sky blue-gray, fierce and determined and terrified all at once. He kept thinking about the way she had said she would rather die than go back. He understood that feeling better than he wanted to admit. Over the next week, Penelope healed. Yates saw her from a distance as he worked, catching glimpses of her helping Sarah in the garden or hanging laundry. Her dark hair, clean now, fell in long waves past her shoulders, and she moved with a natural grace even in the borrowed calico dress that was too big for her slender frame. She was beautiful, Yates realized, truly beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with fine clothes or jewelry. But it was still her voice he remembered most. That educated cadence, the way she shaped words with precision and care. They did not speak directly until 10 days after he brought her to the ranch. He was mending fence line near the house when she approached, carrying a canteen and a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Sarah said you have been working since dawn without a break," Penelope said. "I brought you water and some bread." "Thank you." Yates took the canteen and drank deeply, watching her over the rim. In the afternoon sun, her hair gleamed almost black, and her eyes were the color of storm clouds on the horizon. She had gained back some weight, and the scratches on her arms were healing. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "For helping me, for not leaving me by that fence. Anyone would have done the same." "No," her voice was firm. "They would not have. Most men would have assumed I was trouble and ridden past. Or worse, they would have assumed I was there for the taking and tried to claim me for themselves. You did neither. You brought me to safety and asked for nothing in return. That is not common, Yates Maddox." He felt uncomfortable under her direct gaze. "You needed help, that is all." "That is not all." She sat down on the grass beside the fence post, unmindful of her skirt. "Sarah told me you stayed here because you thought my father might come looking for me. That you wanted to help protect me if there was trouble." "Sarah talks too much." "She cares about you. She says you are a good worker and a decent man, and both are rare on the frontier." Penelope looked out at the rolling grassland, her expression distant. "I grew up in a big house in Helena with servants and fine dresses and all the books I could read. I thought that was what life was supposed to be, elegant, controlled, safe, but it was a cage, Yates. A beautiful cage, but a cage nonetheless. My father controlled everything I did, everywhere I went, everyone I spoke to. And when I tried to have a voice of my own, he decided to sell me to his business partner like a piece of furniture." "That is not right," Yates said quietly. "No, it is not, but it is legal. Women are property in the eyes of the law." She turned back to him, and he saw that fierce determination again. "I will never go back to that. I will work my fingers to the bone on this ranch. I will scrub floors and haul water and mend clothes. I will do anything Sarah needs. But I will do it free as myself, not as my father's property or Augustus's wife." Yates found himself moving to sit beside her, something he would normally never do. "What will you do if your father finds you?" "Run again, keep running until he gives up or I am too far away to find." She met his eyes. "Unless he brings the law. Sarah says my father could claim I am mentally incompetent, have me declared insane for running away from a good marriage. A judge might side with him." "Not in Montana territory," Yates said. "Judges out here care more about keeping the peace than enforcing social niceties. If you make it clear you are staying of your own free will, most will not force you back." "Most is not all." "No," he admitted. "It is not." They sat in silence for a moment, and Yates found himself acutely aware of her presence. The way the wind caught her hair, the way her hands rested in her lap, fingers laced together. The way she smelled faintly of soap and sunshine. It had been so long since he let himself notice a woman. Not just notice her appearance, but notice her as a person, her thoughts, her voice, her courage. "Why do you keep moving?" Penelope asked suddenly. "Sarah says you never stay anywhere longer than a season, that you are always looking for the next job, the next place." Yates tensed. "It is safer that way." "Safer from what?" He should deflect, he should make some joke about wanderlust or restlessness. Instead, he heard himself telling her the truth. "From caring. Caring gets you killed on the frontier. My father cared about his land, and he died defending it from claim jumpers. My brother cared about honor and duty, and he died in a skirmish with Sioux warriors who were just defending their own territory. I watched them both die because they planted roots and decided something mattered enough to fight for." "So you decided nothing would matter," Penelope said softly. "You decided to stay alone. It has kept me alive for 25 years. "Has it?" She turned to face him fully, and her eyes were sad. Or has it just kept you from living? The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Before he could answer, one of the other ranch hands called out that there were riders approaching. Yates got to his feet, his hand automatically going to the gun at his hip. 5 men rode up the long drive to the ranch house. They were well-dressed, their horses expensive, and the man in the lead had the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. Beside Yates, Penelope made a small, choked sound. "That is my father," she whispered. "Edmund Nash. And Augustus is with him." Yates looked at the second man, older than he had expected, probably 50 with graying temples and cold eyes. This was the man Penelope had been supposed to marry, the man she had kicked and punched and run from. "Stay behind me," Yates said. "Yates, no, he will. Stay behind me." Sarah came out of the house, her rifle cradled casually in her arms. The other ranch hands drifted closer, forming a loose perimeter. Yates felt a surge of gratitude for their unspoken support. Edmund Nash dismounted, his eyes scanning the ranch until they locked on Penelope. "There you are, thank God, we have been searching for days. Come here, daughter. It is time to stop this foolishness and come home." "I am home," Penelope said, her voice shaking but clear. "I am not going back to Helena." "Do not be absurd. You are 20 years old, unmarried, and you have no means of supporting yourself. You will come back with me now, we will complete your marriage to Augustus, and this entire unfortunate incident will be forgotten." "No." Edmund's face darkened. "I am your father. You will obey me." "I am an adult and I am staying here of my own free will," Penelope said. She stepped forward, moving beside Yates rather than behind him. "I am working for Mrs. Coleman in exchange for room and board." "I am not your property anymore, father." "That is where you are wrong." Edmund pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I have a writ from Judge Harrison in Helena declaring you mentally incompetent due to hysteria and delusions. As your father and legal guardian, I have the authority to take you home for your own protection." Yates felt Penelope stiffen beside him. He had heard of this tactic before. Wealthy men used accusations of hysteria to control rebellious daughters and wives, getting friendly judges to sign papers that stripped women of all legal rights. Once declared incompetent, Penelope would have no more say in her own life than a child. "That paper is not worth anything in Montana territory," Sarah said coldly. "Helena judges have no authority out here." "The territorial governor will uphold it," Augustus said, speaking for the first time. His voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly certain. "Mr. Nash has significant influence in Helena. It would be easier for everyone if Penelope simply came along willingly." "I am not going." Penelope's hands were clenched at her sides. "You cannot force me." "Actually, we can," Edmund gestured, and 2 of the men with him dismounted. "Gentlemen, please escort my daughter to her horse. Use whatever force is necessary." The men started forward. Yates drew his gun. "That is far enough," he said quietly. The men stopped. Edmund's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Yates Maddox, I work for Mrs. Coleman, and I am telling you that Penelope Nash is staying here. You have no legal authority to interfere with a father retrieving his daughter." "Maybe not. But I have a Colt 45 that says you are leaving without her." Augustus laughed, the sound ugly. "One cowboy with a gun, do you really think you can stop all of us?" "He is not alone." Sarah raised her rifle. The other ranch hands moved closer, and Yates saw that they were all armed. 6 against 5, and the ranch hands had the advantage of knowing they were defending their home ground. For a long moment, no one moved. Edmund's face had gone red with fury, but he was also calculating, weighing his options. Finally, he said, "This is not over, Penelope. I will go to the territorial marshal. I will bring the law down on this ranch. You will come home, one way or another." "I would rather die," Penelope said. "That can be arranged," Augustus said softly, his eyes on Yates. "Men die all the time on the frontier. Accidents happen. You should remember that, cowboy." It was a direct threat, and Yates felt his finger tighten on the trigger. But shooting Augustus now in front of witnesses would only give Edmund the excuse he needed to bring real law enforcement, so he forced himself to lower the gun, keeping his voice steady. "Ride out." "No." Edmund remounted, his movements stiff with rage. "You are making a terrible mistake, Penelope, both of you are." Then they were gone, riding back down the long drive in a cloud of dust. Yates did not holster his gun until they were out of sight. Penelope was shaking. He will come back. He will bring marshals, judges, lawyers. He has enough money to buy anyone. Maybe, Sarah said, but I know people too. I have friends in the territorial government who owe me favors. Let me send some letters, make some inquiries. If we can get someone higher up to declare you legally independent, your father's writ will not matter. That could take months. Then you stay here for months. Sarah put her hand on Penelope's shoulder. You are under my protection, girl, and anyone who wants to take you will have to go through me and every hand on this ranch. Yates saw the other men nodding, and he felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. This was what he had avoided for so long: belonging, community, people who mattered enough to fight for. It was terrifying. That night he found Penelope sitting on the porch of the main house, staring out at the darkness. The moon was nearly full, turning the grassland silver. You should be inside, Yates said, in case they come back. They will not come tonight. My father is not the type to launch a midnight raid. He will go back to Helena, call in his favors, and come back with legal authority. She looked up at him. You threatened to shoot my father today. Why? Because he was trying to take you by force. You barely know me, Yates. You have known me for less than 2 weeks, yet you were willing to risk killing or being killed to protect me. Why? He sat down beside her, struggling for words. Because it was the right thing to do. No, she turned to face him, and her eyes were bright in the moonlight. That is what you are supposed to say. That is the polite answer, but I want the truth. Why did you really do it? Yates felt something crack inside him, all the walls he had built over years of solitude suddenly feeling thin and fragile. Because when I look at you, I see someone who is willing to risk everything for freedom. And that matters to me more than staying safe. You said caring gets you killed on the frontier. I did. Are you changing your mind? He should say no. He should make some excuse and walk away, back to the safety of emotional distance. Instead, he reached out and took her hand, feeling the calluses forming on her palm from a week of ranch work. I think maybe some things are worth dying for after all. She laced her fingers through his, and they sat together in the moonlight, not speaking, just being. And for the first time in 10 years, Yates Maddox did not feel alone. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Sarah sent her letters, calling in favors with territorial officials and judges who were less susceptible to Edmund Nash's bribes. Penelope continued to work on the ranch, learning skills that her elegant upbringing had never taught her. She learned to milk cows and churn butter, to mend fences and tend chickens. Her hands grew rough and her skin tanned, and she had never looked more beautiful to Yates. They fell into a pattern. Yates would work the cattle during the day, riding out to check on the herds and repair fencing. Penelope would do her chores around the house and garden. In the evenings, they would meet on the porch, and she would tell him about the books she had read, the ideas she had dreamed about in her cage in Helena. He would tell her about the places he had been, the cattle drives and roundups and long nights under the stars. Do you ever regret it? She asked one evening, never staying anywhere long enough to build something permanent. I used to think I did not, Yates said, but lately I have been wondering what it would be like to have a place of my own. Land that was mine, a house, maybe a family. He paused, then added quietly, maybe someone to share it with. Penelope's breath caught. Yates. I know it is too soon, he said quickly. I know you just escaped one forced marriage, and you do not need me pushing you into something you do not want. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I see a future. For the first time in my life, I can imagine staying somewhere, building something, and it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because it means caring, it means having something to lose. He turned to look at her. And I have spent so many years protecting myself from loss that I do not know if I remember how to do anything else. She reached out and took his hand, the gesture familiar now after weeks of these evening conversations. I spent 20 years in a cage, Yates. A beautiful, comfortable cage where I was fed and clothed and educated, but a cage nonetheless. And I thought freedom meant being alone, being completely independent. But these past weeks, working beside Sarah, talking with you every evening, I have realized something. She squeezed his hand. Freedom is not about being alone, it is about choosing who you want to be with. And who do you choose? She smiled, and it transformed her face. I choose the cowboy who picked up a runaway bride in rags and saw a person worth saving. I choose the man who was willing to face down my father and risk everything to keep me safe. I choose you, Yates Maddox, if you will have me. He kissed her then, there on the porch with the Montana stars overhead and the sound of night birds calling across the grassland. It was gentle and fierce all at once, a promise and a beginning. I choose you too, he whispered against her lips. God help me, I choose you. The trouble came 2 weeks later. Sarah's letters had borne fruit. The territorial governor himself sent a reply stating that Edmund Nash's writ from Helena was being reviewed and that Penelope would be considered under the governor's protection until the matter was resolved. It was not a complete victory, but it was a reprieve. Then Augustus Thornton came back. He came alone this time, riding up to the ranch in mid-afternoon when most of the hands were out working cattle. Yates was in the barn, repairing a broken saddle, when he heard Penelope scream. He ran outside to find Augustus dragging Penelope toward his horse. She was fighting him, clawing and kicking, but he was bigger and stronger and he had one arm locked around her waist. His other hand held a gun pressed against her side. Let her go, Yates said, his own gun already drawn. Augustus stopped, breathing hard. No, she is coming with me. Edmund may have given up, but I have not. I paid good money for this girl, and I will have what I purchased. She is not for sale. Everything is for sale, cowboy, and when I get her back to my ranch, I will make sure she learns her place. By the time I am done with her, she will beg to marry me just to make the pain stop. Augustus's smile was vicious, and there is nothing you can do about it. If you shoot me, the bullet might go through and hit her. Are you willing to take that risk? Yates' mind raced. Augustus was right. At this angle, a shot could hit Penelope, but if he did not do something, Augustus would take her and Yates would never see her again. Penelope's eyes met his, and he saw fear there but also trust. She believed he would find a way. You will have to kill me, Penelope said suddenly. Because if you take me, I will fight you every moment. I will run at the first chance. I will make your life hell, Augustus. The only way you will ever have me is if I am dead. Then maybe I should just kill you now and be done with it, Augustus snarled. He started to raise the gun. Yates fired. The shot took Augustus in the shoulder, spinning him away from Penelope. She dropped and rolled, and Yates was there, pulling her behind him as Augustus staggered, blood spreading across his shirt. The gun fell from Augustus's hand. You shot me, Augustus said, his voice filled with disbelief. You actually shot me. You threatened to kill her. I suggest you get on your horse and ride to the nearest doctor before you bleed out. Yates kept his gun trained on Augustus, his heart hammering. And if you ever come near Penelope again, I will not aim for your shoulder. Augustus stumbled to his horse, clutching his wounded shoulder. You are both dead, he said. Edmund will make sure of it. You cannot fight his money and his influence. He will destroy you. Let him try, Yates said. They watched Augustus ride away, weaving in his saddle. As soon as he was out of sight, Penelope turned and buried her face in Yates' chest, shaking. I thought he was going to kill you, she said. I thought I was going to watch you die. I am all right, we are both all right. Yates held her tight, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his. But Augustus was right about one thing. Your father will not stop. He will come back with more men, more guns. He will bring the law or outlaws, whichever he thinks will work. And next time we might not be able to stop him. Penelope pulled back to look at him. Then what do? We leave tonight. The words came out before he had fully thought them through, but once he said them, Yates knew they were right. Sarah has friends in Wyoming territory, a ranch near Cheyenne. She can give us letters of introduction. We take what we can carry and ride south. By the time your father gets back here, we will be gone. They will follow us. Montana territory is a big place. And Wyoming is bigger. If we are careful, if we keep moving and cover our tracks, we can disappear. He cupped her face in his hands. I am not going to let them take you, Penelope, I swear it. What about your life here? Your job. My life is wherever you are, Yates said, and realized he meant it completely. I told myself for years that I did not want roots, that I did not want to care about anything or anyone, but I was wrong. I was not protecting myself. I was just afraid of loss, afraid of pain, afraid of needing someone so much that losing them would destroy me. He kissed her forehead. But I need you, I love you. And I would rather risk everything than live without you. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too. I think I have loved you since that first day when you could have ridden past me but stopped instead. She kissed him fiercely. So yes. Let us leave tonight. Let us build a life somewhere they cannot find us. They told Sarah their plan and she nodded grimly. I expected this. Edmund Nash is not the forgiving type. She went to her desk and pulled out several letters. These are for Bill McCarran in Wyoming. He owes me his life 3 times over. Tell him I am calling in those debts. He will give you work and keep your whereabouts quiet. Thank you, Penelope said. For everything. You are a good girl, Penelope Nash. You deserve to be free. Sarah hugged her, then turned to Yates. Take care of her and take care of yourself. Do not let fear make you run forever. At some point, you have to stop and build something. I know, Yates said, and I will, just not here, not yet. They left at midnight, riding south under a sky full of stars. Yates had packed light, just his bedroll and supplies and what money he had saved. Penelope wore her borrowed calico dress and carried nothing but the clothes on her back. But as they rode through the Montana darkness, Yates felt freer than he had in years. They traveled for 3 weeks, moving carefully, covering their tracks, avoiding towns where possible. They slept under the stars and ate beans and hardtack cooked over small fires. Yates taught Penelope how to shoot, how to read trail signs, how to survive in the wilderness. She learned quickly, her natural intelligence and determination making her a fast student. They crossed into Wyoming territory on a warm June morning. The land here was different, more rugged, with mountains rising in the distance. Yates felt something settle in his chest. This place felt right somehow, remote enough to hide, beautiful enough to build a life. Bill McCarran's ranch was another week south. When they finally arrived, exhausted and trail-worn, Bill took one look at Sarah's letter and nodded. I can always use good hands. You can work for wages or for a stake in some land. Got some acreage west of here, good grazing, near water. If you want a homestead, I will help you file the claim. Yates looked at Penelope. What do you think? I think it sounds like home, she said, so they filed a homestead claim. 160 acres of Wyoming grassland with a small creek running through it and a view of the mountains. It was hard work building the cabin, harder still to get the first crops planted and fences raised. But they did it together, side by side, and every nail Yates hammered felt like he was building something real, something permanent. They were married in Cheyenne that October by a circuit preacher, with Bill McCarran and his wife as witnesses. Penelope wore a simple blue dress that she had sewn herself, and Yates wore his best shirt and a new hat. There was no elaborate ceremony, no fancy reception. Just 2 people promising to love each other for the rest of their lives. Do you regret it? Yates asked that night as they lay together in their small cabin. Giving up your life in Helena, all that wealth and comfort for this. Penelope propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I gave up a cage, Yates. In exchange, I got freedom, love, and a partner who sees me as an equal. That is not a sacrifice, that is a miracle. Winter came, and with it, the fear that Edmund Nash might still find them. But as the months passed with no sign of pursuit, they began to relax. Spring brought word from Sarah. Edmund had declared his daughter dead and put up a monument in the Helena cemetery. To the world, Penelope Nash no longer existed. I should feel sad, Penelope said when she read the letter. He was my father, but all I feel is relief. You are free, Yates said. Truly free, he cannot touch you now. Their homestead grew. They acquired cattle, a few horses, chickens. Yates hired on with Bill McCarran for seasonal work, earning extra money for supplies and improvements. Penelope turned out to have a talent for breeding chickens and selling eggs, and she started a small but profitable business trading with the neighboring homesteads. A year after they arrived in Wyoming, Penelope told Yates she was pregnant. He felt terror and joy in equal measure, remembering his own mother dying in childbirth, his father's grief. But Penelope squeezed his hand and said, "We will be all right, we have each other." Their son was born in April 1880, delivered by Bill McCarran's wife, with Yates pacing outside the cabin like a caged animal. When he finally heard the baby cry, he rushed inside to find Penelope exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny red-faced bundle. "What should we name him?" she asked. Yates thought of his father and brother, of all the people he had lost. "James," he said, "after my father, if that is all right with you." "James Maddox," Penelope said, testing the name. "I like it." Watching his wife hold their son, Yates felt the last of his old fears dissolve. This was what he had been running from all those years, not death or loss, but life itself. Real life with all its risks and rewards. He had been so afraid of caring that he had nearly missed out on everything that mattered. Their homestead became a real ranch over the next 5 years. They hired hands, expanded their herd, built a bigger house. Penelope started a school for the local children, teaching them reading and arithmetic in their front room during the winter months. Yates became known as a fair but tough rancher, someone you could trust to keep his word. And every evening, no matter how hard the day had been, they would sit together on their porch and watch the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes they talked, sharing stories and dreams. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, grateful for everything they had built together. On their 10th anniversary, Yates gave Penelope a locket with a tiny daguerreotype of their family inside. James was 9 now, joined by 2 daughters, Clara and Rose. They were growing up wild and free, learning to ride and shoot, and read Shakespeare with equal enthusiasm. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had married Augustus?" Yates asked. Penelope shuddered. "Sometimes in nightmares, but then I wake up and you are beside me and I remember that I am free. We are free. We built this life ourselves, on our own terms, and no one can take it from us." "I was so afraid of caring," Yates said. "So afraid of having something to lose, but you taught me that love is not a weakness, it is strength. It is what makes all of this worth fighting for." "We taught each other," Penelope said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You gave me freedom when I was running in rags. I gave you a reason to stop running. We saved each other, Yates." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the solid warmth of her against him. In the distance, he could hear James and the girls playing, their laughter echoing across the grassland. The cattle were lowing as they settled in for the night. Smoke rose from the chimneys of neighboring homesteads, evidence of other families building their own dreams in this wild territory. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it. Not just survival, but a life worth living, a place to belong, a family to protect and cherish. Love that had grown from desperate beginnings into something strong and unshakable. The frontier had not killed him after all. It had given him everything he never knew he needed. And it had all started the day he spotted a runaway bride in rags by the side of a Montana road, and heard her speak with a voice that told him she was worth any risk, any sacrifice, any leap of faith. "I love you," he said quietly. "I love you too," Penelope replied. "Forever." And there, on their Wyoming homestead, with their children's laughter ringing in the air and the vast Montana sky stretching overhead, Yates Maddox finally understood that the greatest act of courage is not facing death without fear, but embracing life with all its beautiful, terrifying uncertainty. He had found his home, he had found his heart, and he would never run again.